All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics and Money, formerly known as Geopolitics in Conflict. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
How are you?
I am doing I'm doing great. I am about to go out of country for a week and I am
Good,
very, very ready
good for you.
for
It's
that.
always nice to step away from everything, shut the phone down, and just chill out.
Yes. Yes,
Anyway,
please.
excited to be with you all. First of all, please, if you can type in where you are joining us from here, and if it is your first time here, we will greatly appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel. We got an interesting topic today, so we're going to be addressing what is going on with the Supreme Court versus Donald Trump's
Mhm.
tariffs. One thing we want to start from the get-go is we are not going to be talking about the legal aspects of this, for a simple
Right.
reason is we are not lawyers, and second, this is much bigger than just a sort of Supreme Court case, and it touches now on the livelihood of the average American citizen. When you consider that yes, there are some Americans are going hungry. It's because usually they don't use the term. We don't use the term here in America that way. We use the food insecurity. In a simple language, that's being hungry, and that's because of the policies of Donald Trump. But the Supreme Court case, even though they call it the $3 trillion battle, this is not the exact one how it is. Basically, is the Supreme Court case challenging Donald Trump's tariff. In other words, does the president has this sort of sweeping powers to just do whatever, or is his actions considered to be illegal under our Constitution?
Well, and David, I think you're bringing up something that's very important, and that is overall, we're watching a lot of sentiment shift
Yeah,
here in the United States. So, at the very beginning of this whole Trump tariff debacle,
yeah,
there was a lot of support for it. There was a lot of yes, like make America great again. And
yeah,
although that's a really wonderful sentiment, the reality has turned out to be a lot messier and a lot more costly, I think, than Americans actually thought it would be. And
yeah,
so you're bringing up a very good point because overall, I think a big question that Americans have had about
yeah,
Donald Trump's policies in general, because it's not just this. I mean, we've seen Donald Trump bring military into cities. There are some pushing of boundaries, very, very strong ones, that there really is the question of does this branch of the government have the power to do this? What has
yeah,
happened with tariffs has completely rewritten the United States on the global stage. It's rewritten relationships with not only countries that we had as enemies, but countries that we had as allies. And so all of a sudden, with one sweeping policy, we've watched the United States' position on the global stage really start to shift. And I
yeah,
think it is worth asking the question of whether that really is within his legal purview to be able to do.
yeah. And that is exactly what the Supreme Court heard the case or the arguments on November 5th. By the way, that happened. And the
Mhm.
reason why it decided to take on this case, because it was in a lower court, is to determine if Donald Trump sort of legally and lawfully used what's known as the IEEPA. This is the International
Mhm.
Emergency Economic Powers Act. This one was signed sort of, it goes back to 1977 under the emergency law. So this is exactly why the Supreme Court, just to give you background before we get into why the Supreme Court decided to take on this case, is again to argue with the Solicitor General, in other words, the equivalency
Mhm.
of the Trump administration's lawyer, to whether Donald Trump's in possession of the tariffs without congressional approval has violated certain aspects of our constitutional due process. This is exactly what is going on with it. So the case basically, just briefly here from the legal aspects, the case hinges on whether Donald Trump had the authority. This is the key word,
Mhm.
whether he had the authority to just go ahead and impose a broad tariffs using this 1977 emergency law, because this emergency law is given the authority to Congress, not to the president, because
Right.
the president, Congress, according to our Constitution, has the power to tax, not the president of the United States. And this is again where you're going to see the concern with this moving forward, is whether now the sort of it will be a butt head between the presidential powers and the legislative branch of the government. This is again the significant sort of long-term implications for the balance of power between the president and Congress.
Absolutely. And David, I think you bring up a really good point, because fundamentally, so one of the big criticisms of the system that we have right now is the
Yeah.
fact that because there is no real coherence in our government, it's very hard to actually get very much done. And that's just unfortunately a fact. Like if something has to go through Congress, you have to have very deep pockets to apparently lobby the crap out of them.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
you end up with a giant freaking bill that's full of stuff that everybody, I guess, has been lobbied. I mean, lobbied is a nice way of saying like paid for it, but
Yeah.
lobbied to get whatever it is passed. But let's say that you don't necessarily have in this case, I mean, okay, so let's take a step back with tariffs for a second, because
Yeah.
this is only coming up as a question because tariffs are not, number one, they're not popular, and number two, it's asking the question of like who is actually paying the tariffs, so who's benefiting from the tariffs and who is being hurt by the tariffs. So Goldman Sachs came out with so they come out with reports every few months of who is going to be affected by the tariffs, who's actually going to be paying for the tariffs. So the latest one that they came out with was in October. So it was last month. It was probably about 2-ish weeks ago. And what they said at that point was that by the end of the year, about 55% of the tariff costs are actually going to be borne by the consumer. So the consumer is going to end up eating about 55% of that. So 22% is going to be on foreign exporters, or 22% is going to be by US companies, and 18% is going to be by foreign exporters. So we're looking at companies right now that are not particularly happy because they're about to eat 22%. And the American consumer eating 55%. And, these are not giant numbers, but, you add them up and they become bigger and bigger, especially with the massive financial pressure that the average American is actually under already right now. So I want to point towards, why is this all of a sudden coming up as like, well, maybe this is unconstitutional, maybe this whatever, because it's hurting it's hurting large corporations, which I'm not necessarily against, but it's also hurting American consumers. So, and I also want to bring up that manufacturing is in fact not yet coming back to the United States. So the reasons that were stated to have these tariffs is not happening. We're not watching that unfold.
And we will detail as far as what's in it for the consumers. But I just want the community to get 2 more points, key points about what's at stake with these hearings in the Supreme Court, or the case presented before the Supreme Court. Let me just make one particular statement here. I have no love for the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court of the United States is fractured. And I don't use the term loosely. It's because even the Supreme Court, which I don't believe in the way how the Chief Justices all of a sudden end up having a position for life. I don't believe in this life possession stuff. But anyway, you kind of reach your own conclusions regarding how do you see the Supreme Court. Suffice it to say that what's at stake here, beside what I mentioned earlier regarding the presidential power, you have 2 other key issues. One has to do with the economy itself. And why? Because here is the thing. The Trump administration already is saying that, well, wait a minute, the tariffs have generated almost $90 billion in revenue, and the potential refund to businesses, because the businesses that had to also foot the bill in addition to the consumers, could be a major issue if these tariffs turn out to be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common sense for this. The second point has to do with moving forward. Then what will be the future policy moving forward? Because here is the thing: the ruling in the Supreme Court, whatever direction it goes, will determine if presidents moving forward can continue to use this emergency power to implement some sort of whatever
they
policy
want.
Sweeping trade policies without congressional approval. This is again where the concern, and I just want you guys to have an understanding of at least what's at stake. To go back to your point, Elizabeth, earlier about the consumers, I find myself sort of concerned, given that the data that I looked at, and I'll share with you the link with the community rather, for what's been happening since 2023, and the widespread issue of approximately 47 million Americans live in a food insecure households. That's another word of saying they don't have enough food to eat. And guess what? Out of that 47 million, 14 million out of that 47 are children. It's sad. It is sad for us to even mention this, for the fact that we consider ourselves the richest nation on earth, and yet when you have children have nothing to eat in a household, that's disturbing, in my opinion.
So, David, do you remember, back, we talked about this maybe a year or two ago, where the United States was the only, I think it was the United States and like North Korea or something. I don't remember exactly who the other country was, but it was the United States and some other country voted that food was not a basic human right. And that's that's being shown right now. But I think overall, everything that you're talking about, whether it's the tariffs. So I want to share this on the screen because there's a big, our background is geopolitical trends.
I need to change it. Hold on. That's a different channel.
I didn't catch that either.
There we go. Sorry.
Love it. Okay, so
you should see last time when I was in Beijing and I had to do a sudden live short video, and I said, "Welcome to Geopolitics and Money."
Well, you know what? You were just missing us.
Hey, obviously. I'm just a human being, so I have my own shortcomings too. So
we all do, David. It's part of being human.
Indeed.
So I want to talk about the tariff revenues for a second, because that's the big argument for it, because the tariffs have generated revenues. Granted, as we now saw, it's over half of it comes from American consumers. But like, okay, 22% from American companies, but 18% of it is being paid by foreign importers. Like, okay, great. So, but anyway, so I do want to bring this up because this is very, very important, and it ties all of this together. And that is that the United States is running a fiscal deficit. So the United States is actually running a massive, massive deficit, more than the tariffs would. So, okay, so let's dive into this for a second. So the government raised $195 billion in customs duties so far in 2024 or 2025, sorry. Okay. And that's more than 250% of what it collected last year. So the tariff revenues have generated more income. But looking at this number right here, then you go down to the budget deficit for 2025 is still totaled at $1.8 trillion. So we're looking at adding about $200 billion worth of tariffs when we're looking at the fact that we're still running a deficit for this year of $1.8 trillion. Okay. So now we're looking at budgetary issues, and now we're looking at the government shutdown. Now we're looking at where does money get cut from? And what we're seeing is that money isn't actually getting cut from anywhere, regardless of what is being talked about. That money isn't The money isn't, the hemorrhaging isn't stopping. And that's where the big question lies, because you
Yeah.
talked about the fact that we have massive population with food insecurity. Okay, well,
Yeah.
so for this 1.8 trillion budget deficit, what are we actually getting? What is the United States getting? And a big answer to that is the United States is paying $1 trillion approximately every year in
Yeah.
debt, in loan repayment, in debt repayment. So we have a trillion that's just gone, that just was absolutely, it generates absolutely nothing. But then you've got the rest of it, which is, I think it's approximately 7 trillion.
Mhm.
What is that? The rest would be like 6 trillion. What is that money actually going towards? So it's
Towards.
not going towards feeding people. It's not going towards infrastructure. What is it actually going towards?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
Well,
Yeah,
so
indeed. It
one of
is.
the answers to that is that it's going towards AI. And I want to bring this up for a second because that's a very interesting point,
Mhm.
because Jensen Huang from NVIDIA recently, I think it was like yesterday, came out and said that China is actually going to win the AI race.
Yeah, you're right about that. I saw that one yesterday. You're
Mhm.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's some really big implications there. And the reasons that he cited are reasons that really need to be paid attention to. The first is energy costs. So,
Mhm.
energy costs and energy infrastructure. So, the United States is non competitive, and that's non competitive financially, which I think is one of the biggest problems that every late stage empire has, is that people
Yeah.
are just too expensive. Doing much of anything is too expensive. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these absolutely bonkers policies coming out of the president. I can't even say Washington, but it's coming
Yeah.
out of the president's cabinet, basically, that are ineffectively trying to maneuver around that. But we do not have it is far cheaper
Yeah.
to generate electricity. They have the backing in China, they have state sponsored backing, they have lax regulations, they have laxer environmental regulations, and they have laxer policies, whereas the United States is in absolute gridlock
Yeah.
all the time because of exactly, we can't even run a government. Our government has been shut down for more than a month, which is why people don't have freaking food and pay.
Yeah. That is indeed. Well, this is again brings us back to that number of the 47 million Americans that are living in, have been living in sort of food insecure households. So,
Yes.
and this is again, you think about, this is not just about the government shutdown and certain programs like SNAP and so forth. This
Mhm.
also is contributed through other dimensions. For example, you think about low wages in American labor
Absolutely.
market. You think about, for example, lack of access to affordable housing. This is the reason why the new mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, won the elections despite all the odds.
Yep.
This is, you have also the issue, sort of systemic issues that contribute to food insecurity. And when you have all this contributed, so you start to think in terms, because here is the harsh reality that, especially if you are an American watching this, whether you know it or not, is that
Mhm.
1 in every 8 Americans is unsure today, is unsure how he or she will buy food within the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's a fact. The reason, because also the SNAP program, or SNAP payments, that is, have been sort of shut down completely, and where
Yeah.
millions of people depend on these aspects of it, and that in itself creates some sort of a problems within the uncertainty of
Mhm.
the economy performance as a whole, the big picture of it all. Because what we are witnessing right now, with, for example, the US about to cut down, the last numbers that I looked at, between 10 to 20% of air traffic, because they have to shut because they
Yeah,
shut
fingers
down.
crossed for us, guys. Fingers crossed.
Oh, you'll be fine because you are going in different
Yeah,
directions than
yeah.
domestic one here. So that is I'm talking about the domestic ones here, especially.
Mhm.
So you start to think about the low income families now in America are really scrambling to figure out how to pay for food. So you live in the richest nation on earth, as we claim, and yet
Mhm.
an average Joe, average Jane is struggling to find out how he or she can pay for food. That's in my opinion is unacceptable.
Yeah, it's
It is
disgusting.
disgusting.
It's
It is.
absolutely disgusting.
It is. It is
I
because when we consider the money we just send into Ukraine, send into other countries, why? When we have our issues right here to deal with. So because you have now the idea of Americans. I saw one. I don't remember which state. A long line of Americans standing in line. Because majority of them now deciding between going to work or standing in line at the local food bank.
Yes, and I think that is beyond disgusting. I heard
Yeah,
this statistic, and guys, I don't have the source, so I don't, don't quote me on this.
yeah,
But I saw a statistic that there was enough like donation in between the city and private donation in San
yeah.
Francisco that each homeless person could have gotten $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Okay, well, they wouldn't be homeless if they were
Have to be
receiving
aware.
$100,000 a year, right? So where is that money going? So I think
Yeah,
there's some really fundamental questions that Americans really need to be asking themselves, because even if you are not sympathetic to the plight of the
yeah,
people who are stuck in those programs and stuck in those positions, you need to ask yourself what that really turns into in terms of an economy.
yeah,
Because there are I think a lot of interesting fallacies that we've bought into. Modern monetary theory, I know we've had guests on the show who have been really big fans of them, and I respect them very much. But modern monetary theory, in my personal opinion, the fact that the United States has basically, that's what it's adopted over the
yeah,
last X number of years, I think that has really hurt the economy. I think that gutting out in every single way. I mean, we've gutted out the middle class.
yeah,
So in any economy, who is the driving factor, right? The strongest, if the middle class is strong, then the elites can't take over
yeah,
and large corporate interests can't take over, because the middle class, the lowest classes, they don't have the energy, right? They don't have the money, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the ability to do anything really to change, because
yeah,
like you said, they're focused on dinner, they're focused on how do I feed my family, right? So
yeah,
that section of society is wildly distracted, because of course they have to be, they're distracted by survival, okay? And the elites, they already have what they want.
of course, they
You know
are
what I
already
mean?
on.
They
Yeah,
don't need, and it's such a small sliver of people. They already have what they want. They have whatever they want, and they have all the time, effort, energy, and money to get
yeah,
whatever it is that they want done. The
yeah,
people in the middle, which is why the middle class is such an important part of every single empire, every country, and why a strong middle class is what actually drives a country forward. First of all, is tax revenue. They are the most heavily taxed. Like, David, there's the whole thing of like tax the rich. Okay, great. But even if you tax the rich, you couldn't
yeah.
tax them enough to make up for the
For the
deficit that we
difference,
have
yeah.
by any stretch. I saw that Elon Musk has a $1 trillion compensation package or something like that that's on the table right now. Even
Yeah,
if they were to tax that entire thing, it doesn't make up for our deficit this year,
that's
right?
sure. Mhm.
So
Mm.
you can't tax your way out of that. But an engaged middle class is what holds a country together. And what has been the active thing that has happened here in the United States? What is the class that has been demolished?
Yeah, it's the middle one.
Is
Mhm.
the middle
Middle
class.
class. Well, you look at this just through the tax system, which is to me, it's the tax system is not fair here in America. When you look
God,
at,
no.
and I remember,
Awful.
it's awful. It's awful
Awful.
because and one thing that most Americans do not know, that we do have the right under the Fourth Amendment that we could challenge the governments regarding the expenditure of the tax dollars. It's our money, and yet most Americans do not. Like I always say, an average citizen, he or she is not going to be thinking in those terms of issues because they're worried about, do I have something to eat for dinner or not? So the question for the taxes, when you look at, based on what you just stated, when you look at the tax brackets for the uppers, okay, the so-called millionaires, you look at the tax brackets for the lower, and in our society, the less fortunate, which I truly understand, and I will be happy to make up the difference for them because they don't have any. So that leaves us with the middle class that is heavily taxed at a higher rates between 28 to almost 34%. Well, middle class, that doesn't mean they are millionaires. Middle class, they are also could also mean that they live on a fixed income.
Well, and David, go ahead. You know that
I lost my thoughts.
Okay, so this is interesting and important to what you're saying. Do you know what the classifications actually are for middle class versus lower class versus upper class? Okay, so to be part of the like upper class 1%, do you know how much you have to make? $170,000.
Wow.
Okay, there's a large gap between $170,000 and Elon Musk. So what do you think the lower class is for a family of 4?
Yeah, they don't have any. So
it's something like $18,000 a year.
Yeah, usually the poverty line in America is $12,000.
Yes, $12,000
poverty line.
But if you have $13,000, does that mean you're not struggling?
That's true. That's how the system looks at it. This is why the system is a mess. But this is why, just to go back to the idea of this food insecurity for the Americans, this is why this whole idea of the Supreme Court wanted to step in, whatever. It's because now they are realizing that when the 2 federal courts sort of forced Donald Trump's hand, that's why it was pushed up towards the chain, towards the Supreme Court. But the point is not about that. The point is that now the Trump administration is considering a partial payment of the SNAP program for about 42 million Americans because they are relying on it. So, and that was just reported this morning. As a matter of fact, Axios reported that. And I'm going to share this with you for the community in the chat box here. You can read it later. So. And that brings us to a much bigger problem, and the much bigger problem has to do to where the country is headed. This is why you are seeing, like I mentioned earlier, the outcome of the mayoral elections in New York. And New York is not a small city. It's a major one. But when you think about within New York, there was about 1.2 or 1.8 million New Yorkers that they had no access to food. That's a big city, and that's why you're seeing where but this falls much bigger on a much bigger issue, not just in the United States, but the collective West. And that in itself has to do with the future of capitalism, the future of so-called democracy. That's based on those two. That's where the West has built its hegemonic glory, if I may use the term, for the last 50 years, in the last century or so. Is this coming to an end? That is a question worth asking, especially now you think about the economy, the way it is going, and especially for an average American citizen who is struggling. Because make no mistake about it, we live here, we see what's in the market. I go and I see how prices are. Some of us are fortunate enough because you learn the basics of how to manage money and so forth, but others are not. And sort of we have to have that compassion for those less fortunate among us. But on the other hand, when you have a corrupted Congress, when you have a dysfunctional government, you're going to say enough is enough. At some point, you say enough is enough. Because the government that is supposed to work for its own people, you don't make things worse for them. You improve the conditions. That's the role of a competent and a functioning government. Unfortunately for us, we don't have that. And I don't fall usually for just because a new guy won the elections in New York or the first female governor in Virginia. All this doesn't cut it. We have a structural problems in the system itself that needs to be addressed. We can talk all we want till those issues are addressed. I don't see any. Something has to give in.
First of all, David, do you want to take some questions?
Sure.
Okay, guys, if you have questions, put the word question in there so that I can find your questions, and we'll take some questions. But I have a question for you, because this is something that I have been observing over the last month and a half.
Yeah.
What do you it should be a huge problem that the government is shut down. Okay. It should be a massive billboard screaming problem that that our government cannot function to the extent that it's shut down. Okay. People should be screaming this from the rooftops. What are you observing happen with Americans? Are they paying really close attention? Are they angry? What are you observing? Because this has been a very interesting last month or so.
Yeah, they are distracted by design. They're being distracted by design. It's because no one is paying attention to how the government, nobody even understand the basics. We're talking just basics of how a government ought to function. And this is what, and to me, it's a big problem, not only about some of us Americans who do not understand how the government works, but how the government in itself shut down. It tells me the incompetency that exists within the halls of powers inside Washington. Congress is useless. The presidency is useless. The leaders, the political leaders, I don't shy away from criticizing, because I believe my criticism is warranted. I'm an American. I am watching what's going on here. I live here. So to those who say, well, you just don't like whatever, that's nonsense. It is nonsense. It's when you have a competent government, you will not have a shutdown. Tell me if there was any shutdown in any other government outside. Not to my knowledge.
That's a great question.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but if I look at history, I never came across. And please, if anybody in the government, anybody in the chat box, if you will be kind, if you are aware of any shutdown in a foreign government, please share with the community which country it was. To my knowledge, none. And again, that's the way I see it. So I saw something quickly here, if I may just make a comment on it. This is from Hong Wong. Donations are not bribes. You are absolutely correct. Hong Wong, you are correct. Donations are not bribes. Here is the thing. There are regulations within the government that limit certain donations. For example, for presidential candidates, you cannot exceed, I believe, $2,500 donation. So that's to my knowledge when I was teaching the government. There are certain limits. And for the candidate who receives that money, has the duty to disclose where those donations coming from. And if he or she does not disclose that, it becomes a legal problem for that campaign. That's the law. So, but the premise of your statements, donations are not bribes. You're absolutely correct. Where the problem with all this is when you have secret donations. I'll give you a quick example. And you know what happened, Elizabeth, in New York for Mamdani? And I know someone in New York who were talking. And did you know how much Michael Bloomberg, you know who Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire, former governor, you know how much money he gave for anti-Mamdani's campaign? $9 million. So
I guess it wasn't enough.
Yeah, wasn't enough because there were two other billionaires. One of them gave 2.5. There were some families, well-known families, gave about a million plus. All
Mhm.
this just to make a point regarding the donations. Now, those, in my opinion, those are not donations. Those will be in a sense of a bribe. Yeah, we want to, but donations in a general term, it is permissible under our laws as long as it does not exceed the limits that is set by the government.
David, I will always remember this
Yeah,
quote, and it was from Sam Altman Freed. I've said it a
ultimate.
bunch of times on here
Yeah,
because it just absolutely blew me away. So during I think it was during his hearings, but he said this like nonchalantly, but
uh-huh.
he was like, yeah, you'd be surprised how little it takes to get a politician to do what you want, basically. Like I was like, what do you mean how little it takes? Like
Takes.
at least if you guys are going to be bought off, at least be bought off for a lot. At least like really go to town, be like, I need $200 million to do this, not like 15 grand, right? So I don't know.
That's true. That's a good one. That
I
is.
think
Oh, I remember. I watched the hearing for that some autumn thing. I followed it closely. I never
wild
talked about
shit.
it, but I did follow it exactly. Even when you
Mhm.
had some investors flew all the way to the island to meet with him, and I was following that closely. I was like, interesting how this
Yeah.
and the secret donations they were given to the Democrats at that time, and so it gives you an idea as to where things are. So.
Yeah, you're right, David. Donation has many different meanings.
I mean, yeah, because here's the thing, and I used to make the case for my students when I was teaching at the university that the donations, this might surprise you guys, donations are considered a form of speech, of a
Mm,
free speech.
yeah,
You
I'm
might be
sure they
surprised.
are. Yep.
It is, except when it exceeds,
Uh-huh.
because when it becomes a problem is when you have someone who has unlimited access to money versus one
Mhm.
who has wanted to donate, but he or she is limited in his or her financial wealth. It becomes that that person with massive amount of money will have more influence over the politicians than one with the. So it's not a level playing field for both to compete, and that's where it becomes very, very problematic. So I saw a question here, if we may address it here.
Oh yeah.
Trump wants to invade Nigeria. Your views? I was gonna do, and I still plan on doing a video for you on the other channel regarding this. This is much more about a strategic importance of Nigeria for the United States vis-a-vis Russia, Turkey, and China. There are three reasons.
Mhm.
And the idea that Donald Trump now all of a sudden wants to support the Christians, it's he just wants to use the pretext for that. Make no mistake, the Christians. There was one village inside Nigeria, which I was aware of when I used to travel at that time to Africa. The one village was attacked, and that village had majority of its inhabitants were Christians. That did happen. So there
Mhm.
are this, except for what Donald Trump is saying. Oh, because the Christians is the same argument he's making regarding Venezuela, because of drugs, which has nothing to do with drugs, and
Mhm.
which, by the way, I did promise you to do a live stream for you regarding one specific information. I found the confirmation, or I got the confirmation. I'm gonna just share the link for that live stream when I decide to do it, either tomorrow or Saturday. Haven't decided yet, but I will share that with you. So just to go back to Nigeria thing, what the United States want to do, just briefly here, and we'll move on, is that the United States is now concerned about losing Africa completely,
Mhm.
and this because you have now third
Yeah.
player in the continent, and that is Turkey. Why is Turkey? Because Turkey is planning or building some sort of a naval presence in Africa, and this is why you have three main countries: China, Russia, and now Turkey. Iran to a degree, but Iran is not playing as much a role as the other three. So the US is realizing they are losing, and Nigeria is one way to get through it because Nigeria has massive oil reserves as well.
Yeah.
There is a lot of gold there. There is some rare earth elements. So when you look at the whole Sahel region, when you look at it, that is the whole reason for why you're hearing this conversation in White House or in Washington about the need for the U.S. to intervene in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm. Well, I 1,000% agree. I mean, I don't condone death or harming people in any way, but
yeah, but that's double standard for us Americans. I mean, come on. What did we do? Here is the thing. What did we do when the Christians in Iraq were attacked? When I was in Iraq, I used to go out and I talk. I knew some Iraqi Christians who used to talk, and they told me, like, you know what, Mr. David, when Saddam was alive, we don't care for how Saddam was. Doesn't matter. But at least when he was alive and he was in Iraq, the Christians didn't worry. Why? Because Saddam made it clear that if you harm the Christians, you will pay dearly. So
right.
And so where was America when the Christians were attacked? The same thing in Lebanon, the same thing in Syria. All of a sudden, now we care about the Christians in Nigeria.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is, unfortunately, very often when there's an economic incentive, there's some other rhetoric that's put on top of it. Like, oh, this is, we're doing this for moral reasons. When you look economically, I think you're absolutely right. I think the United States is very, very concerned, and rightfully so, about losing Africa economically, because we're looking at African countries all across the board. I mean, not all of them, right? But we're seeing it happen more and more. They're number one, getting closer to China and Russia. They're getting massive loans from China to build infrastructure. We're now seeing like Ethiopia and I think this was Nigeria. I don't remember who refinanced actually in the same month that Ethiopia was trying to do that. I think they refinanced rail loans or something in yuan instead of dollars. So we're watching Africa really turn to the global south, right? Turn to China and Russia specifically. And the United States is very concerned. Africa also has something as a whole, and this is obviously different for each country, but I'm sort of speaking as a general rule. Africa also is one of the only places that has an increasing birth rate. So if you look at the Western world, and not just the Western world, this is happening across Asia, actually, also. You're seeing it in South Korea, Japan, China. Like this is also happening there, where the population is declining, like massively declining. The replacement rate is just absolutely not there. But Africa as a whole, the replacement rate is there. So there's still labor, and there's still cheap labor. So China is entering into a very interesting part of its life cycle as an empire, because they also are paying higher wages. So as they pay higher wages, they're running into some of the same problems that everyone who came before them ran into, right? And so a lot is starting to happen in Africa, because there's still cheap labor. There's still a higher birth rate. There's a lot of critical minerals. There's a lot going on in Africa. It's actually very strategically beneficial. You were talking about oil. There's oil, there's massive oil. And it's close enough to Europe, it's close enough to Asia that it can go to those places. And so the United States, very rightfully so, is very concerned, I believe, about the direction that Africa is headed, because it is not towards the United States. So very often we see some other reason, not that that would not be a justified good reason, but I don't think it is the reason that's happening. It's always economic at the core. And so what is the economic benefit for that?
That's true. That
you
is
know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah. We got a question here from Ramples01. But before I do that, before I do this, I want to say, Oualaalou, he's here. My apologies last time when I clicked you off, because it was a bot on the chat box that was saying some nonsense. And by mistake, I clicked on Oualaalou to remove out of. So my apologies for that one once again. I just want to acknowledge that one. So. Question: did you hear about the U.S. building a military base in Damascus? The army arrived today on the 11th, Giuliani is coming to see Trump. That is correct. You're absolutely correct. And the reason for why the Giuliani is coming, of course, is to get his marching orders. Giuliani was a project of both the U.S. and Israel. Just make no mistake about it, and it's common sense. And if you know what goes on behind closed doors with the U.S. And dealings with groups like that, even when you think about Boko Haram in Africa, who was funding those two kind of groups? You have to understand this dynamics. So you're absolutely correct, Rampal Sawan, and we are gearing up towards this because one of the key issues is going to be, it has to do with the division of Syria. Israel wanted to partition Syria. How Giuliani is going to deal with this? Well, Giuliani has no say. Just because he is an interim president doesn't mean there is a lot of ethnic tensions inside Syria. It's because, like I always say, any politics that goes in the Middle East has to go through Damascus. That was for a reason. So short answer is yes, we are building and preparing a military presence in Syria. Is no different than what we did and agreed with Armenia. When we brought both Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign the agreement, that wasn't for nothing. In return, we get to establish a base in Armenia, next door to Iran. That's the reason why. So, I don't know. You want to add anything to this, Elizabeth, or we'll move to the next question?
Move to the next question. You are the absolute subject matter expert on that, David.
Yeah. Here's the next one. Odd there being midterm. Yeah. What do you? Odds on there being a midterm. Is Donnie following Bibi's playbook? Wow.
God, I hope not.
That is. Yeah. It's because the way I look at it, and I'll love to hear your take on it, Elizabeth, as well. The way I look at it is that Mamdani's victory, it was against hatred. It was against the oligarch. It was against the elite. It was against the bureaucracy. It was against the failed policies of the government. Because now what you have, given his background, where he came from, was born in Uganda, as you all know. I think his mother is from India, his dad from somewhere else, or vice versa. I didn't dig enough yet in his background. All I know is that his wife is from Syria, and she studied at the University for Art. That was one of the things. The idea of all of a sudden, the way why is this important to understand is because Donald Trump already reacted to Mamdani's victory. That is where the concern.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this was because overall, actually, across the board, we had the whole Epstein thing that I hope people never forget about that. But we had how poorly the Trump administration handled that entire situation. I mean, it was so bad. And then we have the Liberation Day that brought tariffs that were supposed to bring wealth back into the United States, but just sucked it dry from everybody. And then it's the same lie cycle, right? It's the same sorry for the crude expression, but peeing on your leg and calling it rain, right? That's what we saw in the last that's what we saw with the last administration. It's what people didn't want or expect from the Trump administration. And so I think we're watching a massive backlash against that administration. And Mamdani is like a departure. And I am very curious to see how that unfolds over time, because people are flat out fed up, and they should be. They should be.
Yeah, you all know New York is has the largest Jewish community in the world, in addition to Tel Aviv. And here is the surprising aspect: third of these Jews have voted for Mamdani. That should be loud and clear, to the
Yeah.
point that Bibi's Netanyahu's government issued a statement that they are now concerned that Bibi will never come now to New York as long as Mamdani is,
Good.
But we have to think about the other side of the argument. And as a matter of fact, one of you, and I'm going to show it right here, one of you put that, and I was thinking about it, is will Mamdani get a coup? Yeah, the possibility is there. I'm not ruling that out. It's not only being an outsider, but the only one in the American political establishment, in addition to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's one. Who's, by the way, she's planning on running for president in 2028. She's the one who pushed against AIPAC. Mamdani said it openly. I have no problem with the Jews here in New York, but I ain't going to go to Israel. I'm not going to go kiss the wall. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And that in itself raised serious concern, because you look at Trump right now, how Trump bows to Netanyahu, no matter what you hear, no matter what you see. The image are different from the facts. Trump couldn't do squat against the AIPAC or the Israeli prime minister in that. This is why you're seeing what you're seeing. Mamdani took stand on that. But even with that, for me personally, and even if I were in New York City, most likely I would not vote. It's because I don't believe in both parties anymore. It would be nice to see some fresh air per se, but we shall see how he moves. And this leads me to Marco. Marco, you made this question here. Did the doc say the New York City is fighting the oligarch? No, I didn't mean it for the New York City. I mean it for the big picture.
Yeah, because they're not.
No, they're not. I just wanted to. I should have clarified this. Thank you for bringing this up.
I mean, maybe some of them are. But
well, you look at what Michael Bloomberg did for funding anti-Mamdani to $9 million. It's fact. It's been reported. So let's hope they work with him and improve the conditions of New York City. I was there, what was it, 2 years ago or so? I just couldn't wait to get out, because
it's not my vibe either.
I saw the homelessness. I saw the prices and I just wondered about how people are making it, average people in New York. Back in the day when I went to school in Pennsylvania, I used to go to New York on a weekend. It was lovely to visit. Not anymore. So things have to change. So it's just the way it needs to be.
David, have you seen Ghostbusters, like the old ones, the old Ghostbusters movies? Okay. So my husband and I just rewatched them because, it's Halloween and, big fan of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen the second one in a while, but the second one is literally about like this like demon or whatever happened because of the hatred and malice and bad energy of New Yorkers in the 80s. And I was like, how long has this been going on? How long have New Yorkers been miserable in New York? And I'm sure not everyone is miserable in New York. I'm sure there are some people who really love it. But that's what the freaking Ghostbusters movie was making fun of, is how miserable and unhappy everybody was in New York in the freaking 80s. I was like, has this been going on for 50 years? Have people just been miserable there for 50 years? I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there then. I have no idea. But I was like, how long has this stuff been going on? We talk about it like it's new. Anybody from New York in our chat? Anybody?
Actually, there is one here. If I can, let me see if he's still here.
Yeah, tell me, was it always like this? Because I think there's an interesting war on perception that's been going on. Because if you look at a lot of the wisdom, a lot of the information from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it honestly feels like it was more. There was more information then. There was more. There was more going on than we know about now. Like we think oh, those stupid peasants, they didn't have the internet, they didn't know anything. But maybe that's not true. I mean, I'm not I don't personally know that, But
Yeah.
I'm curious. So guys who have a little bit, who were around then, I'd love to actually know what it was like, because there seemed to have been kind of like its own renaissance of thinking during that time that kind of subsequently got squashed. So I'm interested. David, I want to show this one, this
Sure.
Army with Harmony. Thoughts on Bury shorting Palantir?
So funny you did that, because I had it right here too.
Oh, really?
Right there. I had it. So
nice.
I'm glad you did. So, well, first of all, we want to say thank you to Army with Harmony for gifting membership here for the channel. So thank you so much. Truly appreciate your support. But yeah,
Marco,
I did see them. What do you? I am not aware of this yet. I have to read up on it. I'm aware of Palantir issues and so forth, but this shorting, I'm not aware of it. Do you?
Okay, yes, I am. Okay.
Okay, so, then that's it. I turn it over to you.
And yes, Marco, this is that guy. That's exactly who that is. Okay. So this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors.
No.
Okay. This is just my curiosity, my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a couple of really big things that came out about AI over the last like 2 days, right? So we have Jensen Huang, right? And then we have and that whole statement about how China is actually going to win the AI race, and some really good reasons why that's probably going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, everywhere you see, everywhere is AI a bubble? Is the AI bubble about to burst? It is all over the news cycle right now. Yeah. Well, do you know what freaking happens when something is all over a news cycle? People freak out, and then the thing sometimes happens. So is it possible? Yeah. Because if you look at Berkshire Hathaway, they, I think, are more cash heavy than anybody else right now. Yeah. I always pay attention to what people who seem to have gotten a lot right over the years. Like I said, this is not investment advice. I have no business giving anyone investment advice. But I am very, very curious about the AI bubble and what that really means, because everyone is freaking talking about it right now. It's all over. But when something is that prolific in the news cycle, it's worth taking a deeper dive, right? Yeah. Like, you never believe anything. The news cycle is like, this is how it is. And you're like, no, it's not. And then you dive deeper and it's actually something, something else. I'm really, really curious about this, because we have China's about to win the AI race. The US is about to lose the AI race. Okay, AI is a bubble and it's about to collapse all over the freaking place. So I'm curious. I don't have an answer to that, but I can tell you Donald Trump's, when he was inaugurated, who was in the front row?
Oh, yeah, that line.
The freaking line of tech billionaires, right? They are not just going to let it just go, right? Yeah. They're not just going to be like, oh, okay, China, you can have AI. We're not really going to do anything anymore. No way. No way. So I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's happening, but something else. This is my personal opinion, not advice of any kind, but this is my personal opinion. Something else is going on underneath. But pay attention, because everything that Trump was building up, right? How long has Trump been talking about AI? Like, oh, look at all this investment that's coming into the United States. All of it is AI investment, right? And now all of a sudden we have a bubble. And now all of a sudden we have China winning the AI race, despite billions and billions and billions of dollars being invested in the United States for AI.
Yeah.
Maybe we should real fishy.
Maybe we should do an episode on that next time.
I will. I have one actually in the wings of where China is versus the US. I don't want to, I don't want to give it away.
No, we'll keep it.
But I do have that because AI, the two things that I believe are the big points for the next whatever century is who is going to win the AI race and in what meaningful way, right? Like, who's going to militarize AI? And then who is going to win the Arctic route? Those are the two things I think are like the hot buttons for the next, I don't know, the next section of time.
Yeah. Well, one thing is sure regarding this AI competition between the US and China is that the race is shifting from now the civilian sector into the military arena. So because both Washington and Beijing, they are realizing that they are strategists and already thinking in these terms as to both realize that the superiority within the AI domain, it's gonna mean gaining some sort of strategic advantage in any type of wars that might lie ahead. That is to me where it will be the most important aspect of it. Yeah, I was shocked to see that yesterday. I forget the name of the billionaire who mentioned, "Oh, this is just a bubble," and I was like,
Yeah, but
I read it
you're
from a
hearing it everywhere, though.
I was
You're
like,
hearing it freaking everywhere at once. When you hear all the same message happening all at once, something's fishy.
something is not right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe next when you get back, we'll do this topic. Would you guys be interested in learning about this? Just please yes or no in the chat box, because we're not gonna do something you do not want to learn about, because so if you can just yes or no, would you like us to do the AI show next week or whenever Elizabeth is back?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah, not next week, but the week after.
YT is saying yes. Hong Luang, you say yes, please. Okay.
Cool.
Marcian Dorcier, you say yes. Yeah, I like to have the community part of Zenit. I say yes. Where's Marcian Dorcier? Right there. Right here. Okay. Kevin, James, you say yes. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. Army with Harmony, you say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Done deal, guys. We'll probably in 2 weeks when Elizabeth gets back, we'll do it. So I'll answer one more question here before we leave, guys, and this one has to do with this. Dr. O, what's going to happen with Venezuela? Here is the thing. I don't want to spoil it for you. I sent the link. I put the link for the upcoming live stream. And let me once again put it for you that I'm going to do on the other channel. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but this will give you an idea as to how much the US is really adamant about. But the question is, remember what the US says versus what it does. Those are two. Oh, I need to remove. There we go. I learned now, Elizabeth, how to do this stuff.
You're doing phenomenal, David.
Well,
you're doing great.
Yeah, give me more screens and I'll get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, you all know, guys, that Elizabeth manages both channels behind the scenes. You all know that. So I will be addressing this either tomorrow or Saturday. And I promised you I will do this. And I have really some very, very explosive information that I get a confirmation of as to, I mean, I'm not surprised. I was in Washington, so we kind of know how these things moves, but really what's behind the scenes. So I will be addressing this one, and I'll keep it for everybody. So in a ramble so on, let's share this one with you, Elizabeth, before we go. Today, Professor Wolfset Mamdani, father teaches at Columbia University as a professor, and his mother is a Hollywood film producer. He knows him personally. Father wrote #1 book. I do know about his mother being a producer. As a matter of fact, the layout or the background of his campaign or whatever, it was his wife. His wife, she's an artist. That was the whole reason for why that coloring, the blue and the dark orange, came up. That's Elizabeth will tell you about the combination of colors on it. I know this for a fact. His mother, she's a filmmaker, and she understands production and all that stuff. I don't know about his father. I do not know whether he teaches Columbia, whatever. I do hear some stuff that Mr. Wolf was stating that have nothing to do with a reality regarding the firing of some stuff in Venezuela, whatever. That didn't happen. So I kind of will take step back into. But I do confirm that, to my knowledge, his mother is a film producer. She knows about film. I would say Elizabeth knows about film. As a matter of fact, she went to school. A lot of people do not know, Elizabeth, that you went to school, film schools, for production and all that stuff. So
yeah, and my degree is in global business, so I have that side as well. But my specialty is really human behavior. I have studied it. I have.
Well, you're certified. You are
Yes,
certified in that.
yes,
Yeah.
for decades and decades. Actually, the bulk of my life. And I can tell you that production is all manipulation. None of that is happening. Nothing. I mean, think of it this way, right? So when you get sucked into a show, none of that is real. All of that is fake. Literally every single part of what you're watching is fake, but your brain doesn't register it as fake. And so Hollywood is the master of illusions. It's the absolute master of illusions. So, I mean, that's not surprising to me. I'm not, that's not a quality judgment on whether Mamdani is going to be fantastic or terrible. I don't know that. But what I can tell you is, the difference in presidential candidates when the television came out versus just being over the radio, right?
Yeah.
Everything is an illusion and everything is designed to get you to do something. That's why product placement in movies is so prolific, because it is subconsciously working on you to do whatever it is they want you to do. And that's why I think it's very important. We talk about consuming food, right? And you guys all know to eat healthy, stay away from, processed foods and junk foods and all of that, right? But consuming is more than just food. It's, what do you consume mentally? Do you watch things that are particularly gory or horrific? Do you watch stuff that is manipulation? You got to protect your mind. You have to protect your mind probably more than anything else. So I'm not surprised that somebody who understood production and visuals probably supported.
Yeah, she did. That's I read an article yesterday about that aspect. I mean, I did not. I was surprised in a good way that his mother is the one helping him. That's to me is good. And there, somebody made a comment about, well, maybe he needs to be next president. No, it's not going to work. First of all, because he wasn't born in the U.S. and that's the Constitution. If you are not born in the United States, he wouldn't become. He was born in Uganda. So that's the. So anyway.
Well, and let's see how he does with this.
We wish him well, of course.
Goes.
But New York
like
needs
president.
help. What I do foresee is that the tensions that's going to be now between the Trump administration and New York. That's what I foresee coming. That's what Trump, as a matter of fact, already threatened to cut off the federal aid to New York. The federal aid is required by the Constitution, by the way, just to guys let you know. And any president in America has no right to block the funding for the states. This is what we call the not the power sharing, but the profit sharing. That's how it works. All the states gets. That's what part of the funding is all about for the states. So for Trump to say this, that gives you an idea as to what lies ahead. So.
Well, Trump is very much acting like the United States is just
ridiculous.
And nobody else kind of matters. And that's not accurate.
That's not
so, like him or not. I mean, it's not like a like him or not. It's a he is acting like he's the only person who is responsible. But then on the other side, you got if you're the only one responsible, you got to take the blame for stuff being terrible also, which that's not happening. All
right, guys. Well, we wish you a good rest of the day, evening, whatever part of the world you're in. And remember, as I said, I haven't decided yet whether to do the live tomorrow or Saturday. You will find out. But one thing for sure, and I'm going to put the link on the description, on the chat box for my conversation with Giant Bahandari on Friday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. So remember to join me that. But for the 12:15 live stream, I haven't decided yet whether tomorrow for the Venezuela topic, I'll address that one with you. So we look forward to seeing you next time. And like promised, Elizabeth and I will do the AI. So hopefully she'll be well rested and good to go when she comes back and do that one. So please, if you don't mind, hit the like button and share the video with others and subscribe if you have not done so. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.